If you're a subscriber to this channel, then you know I love testing out these power stations or solar generators or whatever you want to call them. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, then there's probably a button down here somewhere, but watch the video first, make sure that I gain your trust, make sure you get something out of the video, and if you do, then go ahead and smash that button. I appreciate that. But recently I was contacted by this company, NODSOLEX, and it's a company I haven't heard of before, but they reached out, they said, hey, we love your videos, we'd like for you to test out our product, and they sent me this model here, the Oasis 300, to test out, and I thank them for that. Now this video is not at all influenced by the company, it's my own review, my own tests, my own opinions. They don't get to see it before I publish it, but I do thank them for the opportunity, because that's how I get to test out this neat stuff and find out about these new companies. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video, checking out the NODSOLEX Oasis 300. Hey everybody, it's Chris from FamilyGeekery, and today we're going to be testing out this Oasis 300 power station. We're going to check out what the specs are, we're going to plug some stuff into it, we're going to test it out, we're going to talk about some use cases, and we're basically going to see what it can do. So before we look at the unit itself, let's look at everything else that came in the box. First of all, we've got, of course, the user manual. We've got a warranty card here that will extend your warranty an extra 12 months if you go ahead and register it. And then we've got the bag that has the charging cables. Now inside this nice little bag is going to be two cables. One's going to be the AC charging cable and one's going to be a DC charging cable. So this is just your standard IEC 3-prong charger. We'll look at that in the back. And then for the DC charging cable, we've got a cigarette lighter plug here to an XT60, and that's nice. We'll look at that also. So we got two different cables to charge with, and it comes with this nice little bag, and I like that. I like especially that the name is on there. Now, once you get a couple of these things, if you're like me and you've got more than one, you know, maybe they're different sizes and shapes and different inputs and outputs, you end up with a bunch of different cables, and if you're not really organized, you may not remember which cable goes to which one. But as long as I've got a cable bag here that's got the name on it, it's even I can't mess this up. So that's a nice little touch. Tiny extra couple cents to silk screen your name on the bag. That's a good idea. So the next thing I like to look at is looking at all the different specs, and I look at them in a couple different places. One, the outside box, which I've got behind me. One, the user manual, and then if the unit itself has the specs written on it somewhere, then I look at it there also. And this one does in fact have all the specs written down on this label on the bottom here, which I like because when you're out there camping or out there on the road somewhere, you probably don't have this with you. You definitely don't have the box with you. And if you want to remember real quick, you know, what I can plug into this and what I can't plug into this, or how fast something's going to charge or how fast something's not going to charge, then having all those specs written right down there is a good thing. Now when I check all three of those things, I always check to make sure that they're all the same and they all match. A lot of times these things, sometimes the unit will go into production at a different time than the manual gets put into production, and maybe the specs change along the way, or maybe there's typos. But in this case, all of them match, and I like that. That's a good sign that there is some attention to detail with the company. So let's talk about some of those specs. The first two most important ones are going to be how much power this thing can generate as far as the inverter, the AC output, and then how long it can generate that for, basically the capacity, how big the batteries are. And when we talk about batteries, the other thing you want to, of course, know is what the battery chemistry is. And in this case, these are the lithium iron phosphate, or the LiFePO4, however you want to pronounce that. And quite honestly, if you're buying a power station like this, that's the one that you want to look for right now. So make sure it does say LiFePO4, or lithium iron phosphate, because those are the ones that you can charge and discharge and charge and discharge 3,000 times in this case before you start to see any noticeable decay in the batteries. And they generally call that like a 10-year lifespan. And that obviously depends on your use case and how often you're charging it and discharging it. But the way I look at it is that 10-year lifespan gives it kind of a runway that you're probably buying something bigger or better or different technology in that next 10 years anyways. So those are the batteries that I stick with on all of the stations that I buy for myself. And if I'm testing one out, those are the specs that I always look for. So the easy way to remember that first number that we were talking about is how much power output this thing has is basically the name of the device. This is the Oasis 300. so it has 300 watts output from the AC ports. Now, most of the time on these things, you'll have twice the capacity on what they call a surge. So if some device that you plug into there starts asking for a lot of power, maybe to start it up, or a lot of power to change, from one mode to another, then it may draw more than that 300 watts at some point. So you have a 600 watt surge and 300 watt, what they call continuous. So is that going to run a huge refrigerator and a microwave oven and a coffee maker and a griddle for, hours at a time? No, it's not. That's not what this is intended for. You would want something much bigger than this, but with 300 watts, it's going to run most small electrical devices that you may have, especially in a camping type setting. So now that we know that this is 300 watts, the next thing you want to know is how many watt hours it is, and that's the capacity. And this power station here has 249.6, I'll just call that 250 watt hours of capacity. And that basically means that 250 watt hours means if I plug something in here that was 250 watts, it would last for 1 hour. If I plug something in here that was 125 watts, then it would last for 2 hours. So you can use basic math to figure out whatever type of device you're plugging in there. Maybe it's going to be a CPAP, or maybe a small light, or a radio, or a laptop. And you can do some quick math to figure out how long that's going to keep that thing charged for. Now, when I look at that rated capacity of 250 watt hours, the next thing I like to do is look at the price and see what I'm paying per watt hour. And the easy way for me to remember it is, if it's any more than $1 per watt hour, then it might not be a great deal. So in that case, if this costs any more than $250, then it may not be the best deal. Now, there are a lot of other things to consider when you're looking at that, but that's just a quick ballpark number that I use, is $1 per watt hour. Now, currently, at the time of recording, this is on sale on Amazon for $200, so it fits that test. It's cheaper than $1 watt hour. So if all the other specs match your needs, then you can know you're getting a pretty decent value for that capacity. So we got the two biggies out of the way, the output power on the AC side and the capacity of the batteries. So let's go ahead and talk about all the other capabilities it has, all the other specs on the outputs. So starting over here on the left, we've got a cigarette lighter plug here, which isn't used a lot anymore, but it's nice to have. And then we also have two little barreled outputs here, which are DC 5521 plugs, and they're all rated at 12 volts. The cigarette lighter plug is rated at 10 amps, so that would be 120 watts, and the DC plugs here are 5 amps, so that would be 60 watts each. Now, if you're not sure about what volts and amps and watts and all that stuff means, I've got a quick tutorial video that you can watch. I'll go ahead and link that right up here, that explain what volts and watts are, and that helps you make some decisions on picking what size power station you need. Now, also, one of the things it's got on the top here, before I forget about it, is a wireless charger, up to 15 watts, so that's decent. Some of the cheap ones that you see at like Walmart or Five Below or something, maybe 5 watts. Some of the nicer ones maybe 10 watts, and 15 watts are usually the highest powered ones. So it's nice to have that. We'll go ahead and test that out in this video also. Now, as we come across here to the middle, we've got 3 USB ports. We've got 2 USB-A's, those are 18 watts each. And then we've got a USB-C here in the middle, which is 100 watts. And 100 watts, that is amazing for a device this size. Now, 100 watts is what I try to find on any station that I'm looking for personally. Sometimes you'll find 60 watts. On some really cheap units, you'll see like 28 watts or something. But 100 watts is wonderful. With more and more devices going to USB-C and power delivery, that's going to save you from having to plug something into the AC side and lose that conversion rate of going DC to AC to DC to your device. You're just going to go straight DC to DC and call it a day. Much more efficient. And then coming across to the right here, we've got 2 AC plugs. We've got one 3-prong and one 2-prong. And like we said, that's a 300 watt total, 600 watt surge. And it also has a button here called long stay mode. And what that means is maybe you have a device that's plugged into your AC side here, and maybe it cycles on and off. Well, the problem with that is when something cycles off, since this is a battery, it's going to say, hey, nothing's drawing power, I'm going to go ahead and turn off. So if it doesn't see anything drawing power from here, and I've got this AC turned on, it's going to turn off in 30 minutes. Well, if that's something like a CPAP machine that's supposed to be cycling on and off all night long, or a small refrigerator or something, and it turns off, it's not going to turn back on automatically, so that's going to be a problem. So this long stay mode here, if you activate that, it's going to give you an indicator on the screen, and it's going to bring that delay up to 4 hours. So now if something cycles off for more than 4 hours, those AC plugs will turn off to protect the batteries, but at least that gives you a lot more time for something to cycle on and off. Alright, so we talked about all the outputs. Let's go ahead and turn this thing around and talk about the inputs. Alright, so on the back here we got two inputs. We've got the AC input, and then we've got the DC input, which also serves as your solar input. And the input on the AC side is going to be 200 watts max. The input on your DC side is going to be 100 watts max. So whether you're charging this from the car plug or you're charging it from a solar panel, you're going to want to keep that voltage between 12 and 28 volts and 8 amps input to give you that 100 watts max. And then if you're plugging it into the wall, it's just going to go ahead and draw from the wall 200 watts and start charging everything up inside. Also in the back here we've got a little light, and let me go ahead and turn this thing on and go through a couple different settings on the light. If you press it once, it comes on and it's kind of dim. Press it again, it gets a little brighter. Press it a third time, it gets the brightest. Press it a fourth time, it's going to go through an SOS strobe. And if you press it again, it's going to go just into like a blinky, blinky, blinky mode. Then you press it again, it turns it off. And I think if you have it turned on any of these settings, if you press and hold for a minute or a second and a half, it turns off by itself. Now in addition to these two inputs, we also have the added benefit of that USB-C port on the front that acts as an input also. And it's a 100 watt max input also. So 20 volts at 5 amps, just like the output. So if you have a tablet charger or laptop charger that goes up to 100 watts, then you can go ahead and charge that, which is nice. And what's also nice is if you're driving around with this in your car and you forget your DC plug, you can use a regular cigarette lighter, phone charger, USB-C phone charger. Now that's going to be very slow. It's not going to be 100 watts, but at least it'll give you some kind of power input. Alright, so let's turn this thing back around again, and we'll turn on the screen and we'll start looking at that. Alright, so the first thing I wanted to look at on the screen here, we've got the big number right here in the middle, which is obviously the capacity of the battery. That's the current state of charge. And what I want to do first is start to draw that down a little bit so that when we go to charge, we can have this thing ask for as much power as it can. So I'm drawing this down. It's at 96 right now. You can see I've got an output going here, and it's jumping all over the place. That's because it's a gaming laptop. And a laptop is not a great constant draw. It's going to be drawing a lot of power when it needs a lot of power. It's going to be drawing a little bit when it needs a little bit. It's going to be drawing from its own batteries. It's also going to be drawing from its big power supply here. In this case, this is a 230 watt power supply for it. Now, I don't expect to ever see it get up to 230 watts here, but we're just going to let that kind of draw down. Now, as this thing is jumping around, you can see that the time down here is going to reflect how long this battery will last if it's drawing this much power. Now obviously the lower the watts that it's drawing, the bigger that number is going to be in hours, and then vice versa. A better test for this would be something like a 100 watt light bulb that draws 100 watts all the time, and then you could get like a nice solid output here and a nice solid estimation of time. But at least between this estimation here and your big number here, you kind of get a good idea of how much longer you've got to run on whatever it is that you're running through it. Now you may hear this fan on the left hand side here kick on and off as it's charging something. Obviously, as it's producing its electricity and coming out this port here, it's going to be creating some heat inside, and that fan is going to make sure that that heat gets out of the inside of this machine so it doesn't damage any of the internal components. Now, of all the different power stations I have, this fan is probably one of the quieter ones. You can hear it cycle on and off, but it doesn't sound like a wind turbine coming on and off like some of them do. Now while this is running, I'll go ahead and show you a couple other things here. You can see that I've got an AC indicator on here. This button down here, the AC on-off button, you press it once to turn it on. You press it and hold it for a second and a half, it turns it off. So if I go ahead and turn this off, then you can see the output go out. This is going to stay solid now. I've got nothing going out, nothing going in. The laptop is luckily just running on its battery right now until I hit this button again. And this light glows, the AC indicator comes on, and now you can see it's starting to ask for power again. Now this long stay button here, it says you want to make sure that the device is turned on first, and then the AC is turned on second, and then you push this button. And you could hear a beep, and for some reason this DC light indicator came up. and it did turn on the DC over here. I'm not sure if that's just its way of, tricking the thing to stay on, but there is no dedicated icon, according to the manual, for this long stay mode, so I'm going to assume that that's working right. And there is a little tiny dot in here that when you do long press it, that dot does go out. So you can see right now it's turned out, and then when I press it again, it does turn on. So I guess this is the only indicator that you get. I'm not sure why it turned on the DC at the same time, but let's see what happens if we long press the DC button. That light did go out, and this light is still on. So not sure why that worked like that. Let me go ahead and toggle it off again, and then toggle it back on, and it did turn that DC on again. So maybe that's just how it works. I'm not sure, but at least it does have a light indicator on here for that. Now you also do see that the USB indicator is on. As long as this thing is turned on, these USB ports are active. You don't have to turn them on separately like the AC and the DC circuits. So now that we got this going down a little bit on the AC, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab something to plug into this USB-C port here and see if we can get that full 100 watts out of there. Alright, so now I've just got a 15-inch MacBook Pro here, and this has a USB-C input on it, and I've got the USB-C to USB-C cable plugged in from the Oasis 300 to the MacBook Pro. And this particular MacBook Pro model came with a 87 watt charger, and in this case we've got a 100 watt capable charger. Now to make sure that you get the most transfer, you need to have a cable that is rated for that. Not every single USB-C cable is rated up to 100 watts. This one is. I got this on Amazon. I got a 2-pack for like, I don't know, 10 bucks or something like that. It was well worth the investment because some of the other cables that I had that I thought were good were only capable of 60 watts. So you can see now I'm drawing about 73 watts out of here, and this computer isn't really doing anything, it's just charging up the batteries probably. But if we go ahead and go into the system report here on macOS, and then go to power, it's going to tell me what type of power charger I've got plugged in, and right in here it shows that this is a 100 watt charger. So I always test to make sure that macOS does see something that calls itself a 100 watt charger is actually reporting to macOS as a 100 watt charger. And we can see it's going up to 87 watts here. So I've got no doubts that this thing is capable of outputting that 100 watts. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to unplug this USB-C cable again. Nothing coming in, nothing going out. And now I'm going to take my phone here, which has a MagSafe connector on it, and I'm just going to place it up here. Now this isn't a MagSafe device, but it is wireless charger, and I did just feel this thing vibrate saying that it's charging. And if I check the screen, I can see yes, it is charging, but there's no indication on here. Oh, there is actually a little bit here coming out. It shows 2 watts, and it's slowly climbing up. And here we go, we're getting up to 11, 12, 13 watts. So again, if you wanted to charge your device quicker, then one of these USB-C ports would probably be the way to go. But it is nice to have that little extra charger up top there just to quickly throw something on top and get it charged up. Just a nice little added feature. Alright, the next thing I want to do is test this input here. So I've got this Anker battery bank here, which has an output capability of 60 watts. So I'm just going to plug this into here. And anytime you do this, if you go in USB-C to USB-C on any type of device that has both an input and an output, sometimes there's some negotiations. In this case, this port up top here I know is an output only. The one below it is an input or an output. So this thing is putting out 61 watts is coming in. So it's saying about 57 watts going out, about 61 watts going in. That's just a calibration difference between the two. But ballpark wise, that's a pretty good feeling that you know that this thing is capable of at least getting 60 watts in. Now sometimes I test this Jackery here because it has a 100 watt output, and for every other device I've tested, this thing has put out 100 watts and the device has taken in 100 watts, but for some reason when I'm using it today, when the two devices are negotiating, it's only getting 16 watts in here, and it's only saying that it's putting 16 watts out here. So I'm not sure why between the two it doesn't work, but for all the other chargers that I've used a 45 watt charger, I've used a 60 watt charger, and they've all worked just fine. Alright, so the last little test I want to do here, I've got the AC cord that came with it plugged into the back here. And I'm going to plug that into the wall. We're going to test the input charging capability on the AC side. So now we're plugged in. We can see a little indicator on here saying it's getting wall power. And you can see our input is climbing up here and leveling out in that 180 to 200 range. And remember, this is a 200 watt max. So if this was completely empty, it would take a little over an hour, hour and a half to charge completely up from the wall. But 200 watts isn't bad. And you can hear that fan is kind of staying constant there because now it's cooking in here, 180 watts coming in. So it's got to get rid of that heat somewhere. So you can pretty much expect, if you've got it plugged into the wall, that fan's going to be running. Now the specs did say that it does have pass-through charging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that laptop charger and plug that back into the front here. I'm going to turn on this AC circuit. So now you see that we're going to bring this input in some because it's still charging at 200 watts, but it's taking in more power because some of it is going through to the output. So if you've got something plugged in that is actually drawing power, you're going to go above that 200 watt input range, but that's okay because that's still 200 watts max charging, and then the rest is going to your output device. And that's a nice feature to have on a small unit like this, the ability to charge and have something output at the same time. Alright, now that we got all the specs and the tests out of the way, the next thing I want to do is just kind of go over a couple of the extra features that it's got. And the first thing I want to talk about is the handles. Now it doesn't have a carrying handle for a strap across the top, but what it does have is it has these little side handles here on either side, and it's very easy to carry with one hand. You don't have to carry with both hands on either side, but all the times I've been carrying this thing around, I just grab it by one side, lift it up, and it's very easy and portable to carry around just with that one hand. So that's nice. And then the next thing I think you guys have seen already is these little, I call them golf balls all over the place, and these little rubber bumpers that are on all 8 corners of this device. And they're nice in the fact that they just take some of the wear and tear off the whole device as you're lifting it up and putting it down on surfaces and kind of, carrying it around and accidentally bumping stuff. They're just little bumpers on there to save you from beating up the corners of the thing. So that's pretty nice. And then also they do raise it up a little bit so you're not, depending on what you're setting it down on, you're not scratching up the bottom. So just a nice little touch. So to summarize everything up on this thing, all the specs on it are perfect for something this size. All the features are perfect for something this size. Some of the use cases that you'd have this for, maybe taking it to the beach or taking it camping, something where you're not going to be drawing a lot of power for a long time. Like I said, you're not going to be running a refrigerator on it for a couple days, but it's going to keep all your devices charged up. You're going to have several charges on your laptop and your iPad and your phones. And with the ability of plugging in a 100-watt solar panel into it, you can keep that going even longer. Now this is lacking some of the extra special features that some units have, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capabilities to talk to your phone so you can control it through your phone. But for a device this small, I don't think I'd ever use that anyways. If I had a whole house unit that was really large and I wanted to keep track while I'm off on vacation to make sure that things are, charging properly and the batteries are up to capacity, then yeah, having some kind of Wi-Fi capability is perfect. But this thing is always going to be within a hand's reach of you. You're just going to be able to push the button, look at the screen, and you're going to know exactly everything you need to know. So all in all, this is a great little device. It's got the right kind of batteries. It's got the right kind of specs. It's only about 11 pounds, so it's portable enough that you can throw it in the car. You can take it on camping trips. You can take it to the beach. Heck, you can even do what I do sometimes and just throw it next to the couch and plug in your USB-C devices like a laptop or maybe a Steam Deck and keep those devices going for a long play session if you're playing games on the couch for a long time. And it's nice just to have that extra capacity without running a cable all the way across your living room. So I want to thank NODSOLEX again for sending me this unit to test out. I hope that anything that you came here to learn about it, you found out. If you did, I appreciate a thumbs up. If you have any questions that I didn't cover, throw them in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. Like I said at the beginning, if this was helpful and you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and check out the rest of the channel and hit that subscribe button. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I thank you as always for watching, and until next time, peace out and geek out.